So if I had to really summarize it into three buckets, this is what I would do for product managers. The number one is customer obsession. Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, often says, build something people want. And I couldn't agree more with him, which is that, who's the customer? What is the problem you're solving? Why is it relevant? Will they come to you? What is the best way to deliver that experience, etc., etc.? So customer obsession is very, very, very critical. The second category I would say is insight and innovation. So all the PMs, best PMs that I know globally, um, whether they're in big companies, small companies, startup founders, etc., have very, very deep insights. They're very, very good trend surfers. They're very good about understanding how not only consumer behavior is changing or business behavior is changing, but also how technology is changing. How a certain change in technology dramatically enables a new wave of product innovation or a new wave of customer service or customer experiences that can be unleashed. So very, very technology savvy. And I think this is going to get more and more interesting and more challenging. So if you're a product manager, I notice some 35-40% people come with an engineering background. If you're not really good with technology, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to write code, but if you're not a geek, a tinkerer, somebody who plays around with stuff, I think the job is going to get harder and harder in product management as you go along. And by the way, I think the same, interestingly, is also true for CEOs going forward, right? Because if you go to the erstwhile Clayton Christensen, the famous author and professor at HBS, whose book on disruptive innovation is really around this topic, right? Which is that there are disruptive innovations that will take companies apart, and not the next quarter to be delivered on some linear roadmap. And last thing is the product role is a lot about minutiae, a lot about details, a lot about operational excellence. And I think it's very, very critical to understand that and be very, very attentive to the details. I think this is one of the things that people miss. In this case, I noticed a good quarter of you were from the project management background, which is very different than product management. But perhaps operational excellence comes naturally to you because that's your core skill set. But for many other people who come from a classic engineering or other business background or whatever, this is something that you have to do. So almost to the level I would say that, and this by the way is true for a startup CEO, is you should be willing to do whatever nobody else is willing to do. It's almost that is the definition of the job. So you are the jack of all and you are the cleaner of all as well, right? So you are where the buck stops. So that's on the PM side. If I jump ahead on the CEO side, like I said earlier, this ability to paint a beautiful picture of the world, many of you said visionary, absolutely spot on, to dream the dream which is not dreamable, right? And at the same time, the ability to zoom into the details, to zoom into the specifics, it's very, very, very interesting, right? And I'll take a quote. I don't know who it is attributable to, but I'll share it anyway, or at least the gist of it, which says that managers or great managers, and hence managerial CEOs, are those that can define and hit great targets that everybody can visualize and see. So I can say I will ship X amount of product or deliver Y amount of revenue or hire Z amount of people or whatever it is, right? So I can see the target, I can do it. Great entrepreneur CEOs, great product CEOs are those that deliver on targets that mere mortals like you and I can't even see, right? So this would be like size, molecular, gastronomy dish that we can't even imagine that we'll get to eat someday, right? So that is the ability to zoom in and zoom out, pan in and pan out, right? You need to be able to do that. The second, which is they're very good with people. And unlike a product manager, where it is more like a midfielder in a soccer field or a orchestrator of a musical orchestra, here you actually have to manage people. You have to lead people. You have to challenge people. You have to quote unquote, help people perform, or even reprimand people, fire people, hire people, etc. So very critical people skill in the CEOs. And by the way, this is to the potential criticism, and I love to get a lot of critical questioning or debate or agreements later as we get into the Q&A. That a lot of times people think that product managers and engineers may not make great managers and leaders, and we'll see examples of those that do are the ones who will become CEOs, and those that don't will probably get left behind. And last but not the least, like I said earlier, very important for folks to be able to manage investors, to manage capital, to manage customers, to manage revenue. So these are the three really critical things, which is manage people, manage capital, and be able to paint a vision and then deliver to that vision. So that's quick sort of CEO skills in a nutshell, qualitatively.